There's a photograph that haunts me. It was taken in 2022 in a supermarket in Lebanon. A mother stands before empty shelves where bread used to be, her hand pressed against the bare metal as if touching it might somehow make the flour reappear. Her daughter, maybe 5 years old, looks up at her with that particular expression children get when they don't yet understand the world, but can feel that something fundamental has shifted beneath their feet. That image isn't from a war zone. It's not from a natural disaster. It's from a Tuesday afternoon in Beirut, in a world that supposedly produces enough food to feed 10 billion people. We are 7.9 billion. Do the math. Something doesn't add up. This is a story about hunger in a world of plenty. But more than that, it's a story about the invisible architecture of our modern lives, about the systems we never think about until they fail, and about the question that keeps economists, agronomists, and intelligence analysts awake at night. Is the global food shortage a conspiracy, or is it something far more terrifying? An accident of our own design. Let me take you back to a moment that changed everything, though most of us didn't realize it at the time. February 24th, 2022. Russian tanks roll across the Ukrainian border, and within hours, wheat futures spike on the Chicago Board of Trade. That connection between artillery in Eastern Europe and the price of bread in Cairo, in Lagos, in Jakarta, that's the conspiracy hiding in plain sight. Not a conspiracy of men in smoke-filled rooms, but a conspiracy of systems we built without understanding, dependencies we created without questioning. Ukraine and Russia together export nearly a quarter of the world's wheat. A quarter. When those shipments stopped, when the Black Sea became a war zone and grain terminals became targets, it wasn't just a regional crisis. It was a global earthquake, and the aftershocks are still rolling through our world. But here's what they don't tell you in the news headlines about the war. Here's what gets lost in the geopolitical analysis. The food system was already broken. The war didn't break it. The war simply revealed the fractures that were there all along, like flood water exposing the cracks in a dam. I need you to imagine something with me. Picture a field of wheat, golden under a summer sun, stretching to the horizon. Now zoom out. Keep zooming. You see more fields, thousands of them across continents. Zoom out further, and you start to see something else. Lines. Invisible lines connecting those fields to processing plants, to ports, to shipping lanes that cross oceans, to trucks on highways, to warehouses, to supermarkets. Keep zooming and the lines multiply, become a web, then a network so dense it starts to look like a single organism, breathing, pulsing with the flow of grain and corn and rice. This is the global food system. And here's the terrible truth. Nobody designed it. Nobody sat down and planned this intricate machine that feeds billions. It grew. It evolved. It emerged from a million individual decisions made by farmers and traders and corporations and governments, each pursuing their own interests, their own survival. And somewhere along the way, it became something beyond human comprehension, too complex for any single mind to fully grasp, too interconnected to control. The conspiracy isn't that someone is controlling our food supply. The conspiracy is that no one is. Let me introduce you to a man who saw this coming. His name is Dr. Khalil Ibrahim, though you won't find him on television. He's an agricultural economist who spent 30 years working for the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. And when I spoke to him last spring, his hand shook slightly as he pulled up charts on his laptop. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a graph showing global grain reserves over the past 50 years. In 1980, we kept 90 days of reserves. A safety net. Today, 70 days. And in some regions, 30 days. 30 days between civilization and chaos. I asked him why. Why would we let our reserves dwindle when the population keeps growing? He leaned back, and there was something in his eyes, a kind of exhausted frustration. Economics, he said simply. Storing grain costs money. It ties up capital. So year by year, corporation by corporation, we decided we didn't need the safety net. We decided just-in-time delivery could work for food the same way it works for manufacturing. We turned the thing that keeps us alive into an efficiency problem. Just in time. That phrase should chill you. It means keeping barely enough inventory to meet demand. trusting that the next shipment will always arrive on schedule. It works beautifully when everything goes according to plan, and it fails catastrophically when anything goes wrong. The pandemic proved that. Remember the early days of COVID-19? The empty shelves? That wasn't because we ran out of food. It was because our just-in-time system couldn't adapt fast enough when everyone's buying patterns changed simultaneously. The food existed. It was in the wrong places in the wrong packaging, moving through supply chains that had been optimized for a world that suddenly no longer existed. But the conspiracy goes deeper than efficiency, deeper than economics. It goes down to the very soil beneath our feet. There's a word you need to know: monoculture. It sounds technical, academic, but its meaning is simple and its implications are catastrophic. Monoculture means growing the same crop year after year on vast expanses of land. It's efficient, it's profitable, and it's slowly killing the earth. In Iowa, you can drive for hours through nothing but corn. Corn as far as the eye can see, a green ocean that looks abundant, looks like the opposite of shortage. But that abundance is an illusion. That soil, after decades of monoculture, is depleted. It produces high yields only because of massive inputs of synthetic fertilizer, itself made from natural gas, itself subject to geopolitical shocks and price spikes. And here's where the conspiracy becomes visible. Most of that corn, it's not food, not directly. It goes to livestock feed and ethanol production. We grow food to feed animals, to feed humans. An inefficient cascade that makes sense economically, but not ecologically. We grow food to power cars while people go hungry. This isn't a conspiracy in the classic sense. No one decided to do this to starve people. But it is a conspiracy of incentives, a system where doing the profitable thing, the rational thing from a business perspective, leads inevitably to outcomes that are, from a human perspective, insane. I want to tell you about a farmer I met in Kansas. His name is Robert, third-generation wheat farmer. And when I visited his farm, we stood at the edge of a field that hadn't been planted. Why not? I asked. He looked at me like I'd asked why water is wet. Because it doesn't pay, he said. Fertilizer costs tripled. Diesel costs doubled. I can grow the wheat, sure, but by the time I pay for inputs, pay for labor, pay for equipment, I'd lose money on every bushel. So I don't plant. I take the government subsidy for leaving the field fallow, and I wait. Multiply Robert by 10,000, by 100,000, and you start to understand why there's a shortage. The food system isn't designed to feed people. It's designed to generate profit. And when those two goals align, when feeding people is profitable, the system works beautifully. But when they diverge, when growing food stops being profitable, the system does something we never expected. It chooses profit. Now I need to talk about something uncomfortable. We need to talk about speculation. In 2008, as the global financial system teetered on the edge of collapse, something strange happened in the commodity markets. Pension funds, hedge funds, institutional investors, suddenly they were buying wheat futures, rice futures, corn futures. Not because they needed grain, not because they were in the food business, but because in a crashing economy, commodities look like a safe bet. The price of wheat doubled in 6 months. Rice tripled, and people died. The World Bank estimates that food price spikes pushed 100 million people into extreme poverty. Food riots erupted in 37 countries. Governments fell. Was it a conspiracy? Not in the traditional sense. No cabal decided to starve people for profit. But the effect was the same. Money, vast amounts of money, flowed into food commodities as a financial instrument. And that money, detached from any real supply or demand, drove prices beyond what people could pay. The thing is, it's still happening. Right now, as I speak these words, algorithms are buying and selling futures contracts for crops that haven't been planted yet, for harvests that depend on weather that hasn't happened. The price of your bread is being set not by farmers or bakers, but by traders in New York and London and Singapore who will never touch a kernel of wheat. This is the conspiracy of abstraction. We turned food into numbers on a screen, and we forgot that on the other end of those numbers are human beings who need to eat. But there's another layer to this story, another thread we need to pull. And this one is about something we all take for granted: seeds. 50 years ago, Farmers saved seeds from each harvest to plant the next year. It was the oldest human tradition, older than writing, older than cities. You harvest, you save seed, you plant again. The cycle of seasons, the cycle of life. Today, that's increasingly illegal. Let that sink in. In much of the world, it is now illegal for farmers to save seeds from their own crops. How did this happen? The answer involves patents and genetic modification and corporate consolidation. But the effect is simple. A handful of corporations now control the majority of the world's seed supply. For companies control 60% of the global seed market, not 400, 4. And these companies have done something ingenious and terrifying. They've created seeds that produce plants, that produce grain, that produces seeds that won't grow. Terminator technology, it's called. Plants genetically engineered to commit suicide after one generation, ensuring farmers have to buy new seeds every year. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. These patents exist. These seeds exist. And while public outcry has prevented their widespread deployment, the technology is there, waiting, a loaded gun pointed at the foundation of human civilization. Control the seeds, and you control the food supply. Control the food supply, and you control everything. I need to take you somewhere now. Somewhere remote. Somewhere most people will never visit. Svalbard, Norway. A group of islands in the Arctic Ocean, closer to the North Pole than to the Norwegian mainland. On one of these islands, carved into the permafrost of a mountain, is a vault. They call it the Doomsday Vault, though its official name is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. It contains over 1 million seed samples, backup copies of crop varieties from every country on Earth. It's meant to be insurance, a way to restart agriculture if catastrophe strikes. The fact that it exists should tell you something. The fact that the world's governments and scientific institutions felt the need to build a doomsday seed vault in the Arctic should make you ask, what do they know that we don't? But here's the twist that keeps me up at night. That vault, with all its seed diversity, with all its careful preservation of genetic heritage, it represents what we've already lost. For every seed variety stored in that vault, there are hundreds that have disappeared, varieties that evolved over thousands of years to grow in specific conditions, to resist specific pests, to thrive in specific climates. We've traded diversity for yield, resilience for efficiency. And now, as climate change makes weather patterns unpredictable, as droughts and floods become more severe, we're discovering that those old varieties, those resilient survivors we let disappear, might have been exactly what we needed. The conspiracy isn't just what's happening now. It's what we did to ourselves 50 years ago when we decided that agricultural science meant uniformity, when we replaced 10,000 varieties of rice with 10. Let me tell you about Sri Lanka, because what happened there in 2022 is a warning we need to heed. The government, seeking to position itself as environmentally progressive, banned synthetic fertilizers overnight. Completely. Immediately. They said the country would go organic, that farmers would use natural methods, that it would be better for the soil, better for health, better for the future. It was a disaster. Crop yields collapsed. Rice production dropped by 50%. Food prices soared. And within months, the government fell, toppled by protests that began as demands for food and became demands for change. The conspiracy here isn't in the policy itself. Well-intentioned people made that decision. The conspiracy is in the fragility they revealed. Sri Lanka showed us that our modern agriculture has become dependent on inputs, on chemicals, on fossil fuels, to a degree we don't fully appreciate until those inputs disappear. We can't simply go back to the past. The population is too large, the land too depleted, the knowledge too lost. But we also can't continue on the current path, mining the soil, drawing down aquifers, depending on fossil fuels that will inevitably run out or become too expensive to burn. We're caught between two impossibilities, and the conspiracy is that we know this, and we're not acting like we know this. There's a concept in systems theory called a wicked problem. It means a problem so complex, so interconnected, that solving one part makes another part worse. The global food system is the ultimate wicked problem. Want to increase yields? Use more fertilizer, but that runs off into waterways and creates dead zones in the ocean. Want to reduce environmental impact? Switch to organic, but yields drop and you need more land, so forests get cleared. Want to feed more people? Grow more grain, but that requires more water and aquifers are already depleting. Want to protect farmers? Subsidize agriculture, but subsidies distort markets and hurt farmers in developing countries who can't compete. Every solution creates new problems. Every action has unintended consequences. And the conspiracy is that the system has become too complex for solutions, too interconnected for simple fixes, too global for any single government to control. But here's where the story takes a turn, because there are people who understand this, people who are working in the cracks of the system, trying to build something different. In Detroit, in the ruins of abandoned industrial zones, urban farmers are growing food in ways that would have been impossible a generation ago. Using vertical farming, aquaponics, techniques that produce yields per square foot that would astound a traditional farmer. It's small scale now, experimental, but it represents something important. The possibility that food production can be decentralized, that cities can feed themselves, that the vulnerable global supply chains might not be the only option. In India, a movement called zero-budget natural farming is teaching millions of small farmers to grow food without purchased inputs, using traditional methods combined with modern understanding of soil science. It's not a return to the past. It's a synthesis, taking what worked from both traditional and modern approaches. In labs around the world, scientists are working on cellular agriculture, growing meat from cell cultures, producing milk proteins from fermentation. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real, it's happening, and it represents a possibility that we might produce the calories we need without the massive environmental footprint of current livestock agriculture. These aren't solutions yet. They're experiments, attempts, possibilities. But they matter because they show that the system isn't inevitable, that the conspiracy of current arrangements isn't permanent. I want to come back to that mother in Lebanon, standing before empty shelves, because her story doesn't end there. I tracked her down, found her through a local journalist. Her name is Layla, and when I asked her what that moment felt like, standing there with her daughter, unable to buy bread, she was quiet for a long time. You know what the worst part was? She finally said. It wasn't the hunger. We've known hunger before. It was the feeling that the world had stopped making sense. That the rules had changed and no one told us. That something so basic, so fundamental as being able to feed your child, that it could just disappear. That's what conspiracy really means. Not a plot, but a system that stops making sense from a human perspective, that serves purposes we can't see, follows logic we don't understand, produces outcomes we never chose.